Hello fear seekers, and welcome back to the channel. Have you ever been playing around with something that you thought is harmless, only to learn that you had invited pure evil into your life? Today, we're going to be diving into some disturbing, allegedly true, Ouija board horror stories. I just wanted to say, thank you so much for 100 subscribers. This channel has been getting a lot of attention lately, and that wouldn't be possible without viewers like you. Thank you. If you have any scary stories from your own life, feel free to send them to the email in the description. I would be honored to read them. Now without further ado, sit back, put your planchettes away, and get ready to ferment your fears. Hey everyone, I've been waiting a while to tell this story, and it's terrifying. I'm 25 years old, and back when I was 19, me and my best friend Allison were super bored. At the time she was living a street away from where I lived with my grandparents. So like morons, we decided to go get a Ouija board because we had both played it before and we knew it worked and we were bored. I've always been interested in the paranormal, so I loved using Ouija boards. Not after this, though. So after going to Toys R Us and buying one, we decided to play it in the house she was living in at the time, because it wasn't a permanent situation and we didn't want any kind of spirits lingering around my grandparents' house. We decided to play it in the closet in the master bedroom, which was laid out so there were no closet doors or bathroom door. It was like a little hallway that led to them both. We decided to play in the hallway, so we lit a candle and started moving the planchette in circular motions to give the board energy. And then we started asking it questions like the obvious one, is there anyone here who wants to talk? And silly ones like, who will we marry? Dumb questions really, because we thought we were talking to a nice spirit, and honestly at the time we really wanted to know what was going to happen with our futures because we were both dating jerks. So I asked another silly question if you ask me. How will me and blank break up? Whatever we were talking to responded with, he's going to die. Of course I asked, how? And it literally said, car accident. Then I asked, with who? And again, this thing knew absolutely everything about my boyfriend's life. It knew who he was going to be with, which was the guy he worked with every day, and the creepiest part was, it didn't even spell out the guy's real name, it spelled out his nickname. It gave me and Allie the chills, and the candle went out, and at that point we were so freaked out, but decided to ask it one last question. What is your name? And it started spelling out, Mama, over and over again. At the time, I did not know any other demon's name except for Zozo, but I found out Mama is one too. At this point, it wouldn't stop spelling out the name Mama, so we got scared and we forgot to say goodbye. We just got up, threw the board in my trunk, and sped as fast as we could to my grandparents' house, right down the road. When we got there, it was later in the night, and my grandparents weren't home. We walked into my kitchen and turned on the light, and before we could really get a word in, there was a huge bang that came from my computer room, which was in the back of the house. At first I thought it was just one of my cats because they really liked laying on the keyboards and knocking things off the desk, but when I looked up from staring down at the kitchen counter, all the animals were out on the back porch. I made Allie come with me to look and see what the hell was back there because somehow I just knew it was not a person in my house. I don't even think I thought of that scenario, honestly. When we finally opened up the door, the keyboards were on the floor, a bunch of papers and my grandpa's office phone, and all you could hear was the dial tone beeping away. I immediately picked up the phone and cleaned everything up, and we booked it out of my house and left for her mom's house. About 3 weeks go by, and I've been at home with my grandparents, and throughout the 3 weeks it was eerie and I felt scared. Like something was always watching me. I didn't really like being home alone anymore, especially after what happened that one night. Every night I would notice that the corner in my room above my door was much darker than all the other ones. My TV would be super bright, or I would have my little lamp on or nightlight on and that corner would still be pitch black, and whenever I tried to look at it, it made me sick. I was so scared. Then one night, I can remember this night like it was last night. Around 8 or 9 p.m., I was lying in bed watching the Kardashians. I know, typical teenager. And my grandparents were in the living room, literally right outside of my room, watching their TV shows together, when all of a sudden I fell into a deep sleep. Which is super weird because I had like extreme insomnia back then. I woke up not even 5 minutes later, and when I woke up I realized I couldn't move. I couldn't speak, and it was extremely hard for me to breathe. I know people think that this is sleep paralysis, but I'm here to tell you, it's not. Sleep paralysis is when you're dreaming and your mind is aware that you're sleeping, but you'll be having a nightmare and you can't move or scream. This is different. When you wake up in your bed and you're wide awake and well aware of what is going on, I'm positive that 99% of the time it's some sort of demon attacking you. I had been studying the paranormal for some time at this point in my life. I was just infatuated with it like I still am today. But once I realized that I could not move, scream, and couldn't breathe too well because it felt like an elephant was sitting on my chest, I started freaking out. The next thing I know, I'm being pulled out of my bed, head first. It felt like something was pulling me by my shoulders. I started being dragged over the nightstand that was next to my bed, and all of a sudden I slowly started turning to face the ground. Now, all of this took place over about 6 minutes, so you can only imagine how slow I was being pulled out of my bed, and there was nothing I could do about it. I kept trying to scream for my grandma, but I couldn't. I was terrified, and then I remembered what my dad had told me. Pray. When I tell you, the second that I said, "God, please help me," in my head, whatever had its grasp on me let go and dropped me on my face, and the word "Anma" came out of my mouth because I was still trying to scream for her when I was praying. After that, I threw the board over a bridge and began praying every day and blessed my room and the rest of my house. Nothing ever happened again while living there with them. This was definitely the most terrifying thing that has ever happened to me, and I've been through some scary things. I know this was a long story, but I hope it was worth the read. If anyone has had similar experiences, let me know. I've been waiting to hear from someone who can relate to me. I grew up in a small town in Oklahoma. Our town was actually founded in the late 19th century. In fact, the cemetery where we would play Ouija had gravestones that had birth dates starting in the 1800s. When I was about 14, I got into the idea of Ouija and the spiritual world, just reading about it all the time. I'm not a very religious person, but the opportunity to speak with beings who have passed over will never not fascinate me. So it was around then that I and a couple of friends made our own board, out of the box that my Guitar Hero guitar came in. I drew the letters and words on it with a Sharpie, and we used a shot glass as the glass piece. I still have it in my parents' garage to this day. There were many times we had our older siblings drive us out to the graveyard at night so we could play. I want to share the name of it so you guys can look it up for yourselves. There's videos on YouTube of the cemetery that I played Ouija in as a teenager, so just let me know if you do and I can DM it to you for privacy reasons. It's pretty weird to see the name of your hometown in the titles of scary YouTube videos. But anyways, I just want to tell you guys the reason why I began taking it so seriously, and then the story that made me stop playing Ouija for years. There were 5 of us, and I was always the one asking questions. We would bring a big quilt for us to sit on, white candles and a lighter, our board, and a piece. We'd hold our hands and ask if anyone wanted to talk with us, sharing that we'd love to talk with them, and then begin. 2 of my friends who were too scared to play would just watch, and the rest of us had fingers on the piece. The second time we ever played, I asked the person we were speaking to if they were buried there in the graveyard, and they said yes. I asked them their name, and they gave us initials, E.K.W. We said politely that we wanted to stop talking so we could go find a gravestone. We moved it to goodbye, and then we stood up. All pulled out our phones to use as flashlights, and started walking around the cemetery looking for EKW. After several minutes, one of my friends yelled, "Guys?" The rest of us ran over to my friend who was standing there, frozen. There it was, EKW. She had died sometime in the 1920s. All 5 of us started freaking out, yelling, "Hi EKW, thanks for talking with us." We decided that was enough Ouija for the night. Let's end it on a positive note. Fast forward to a couple years later when I could drive. I had a tiny manual Mitsubishi Eclipse, but she was the best first car ever. We were still playing Ouija, mostly in the summers. I had the same few friend groups through most of high school, but these girls were the most fun. Nobody else would follow me to a graveyard to talk to dead people as the sun goes down. One night, we had our usual setup, and had already had a conversation or two with some peeps. Then we said aloud that we wanted to speak with someone new. Anyone. We wanted to make a new friend like EKW. Someone said hello. We said hi back. I asked this thing its name. It said Oz. I thought, Oz? That's a weird one. But we kept messing around with him. Then I asked him if we should be afraid of him. He said yes. I told him we were going to leave. He said no. Then the piece started moving back and forth between O and Z. I said, "Dude, I know your name is Oz. We get it." Then this thing started moving down the alphabet, getting faster and faster. I remembered that I had read that when a piece is moving down the alphabet, it's a bad sign. It can mean the spirit you're speaking with is angry and or trying to come out of the board, whatever that means. I told my friends we have to physically move it to goodbye, not let it keep sliding across the board, so we did. I picked up the piece and slammed it down on top of goodbye as well. We all looked at each other. One of us said, "Yeah, let's leave." So we did. I grabbed the board and piece, my friends started grabbing the candles and folding the quilt, and we began walking back to my car. You know that feeling you get where something could be following you, but as long as you walk and don't run, you won't freak yourself out? I'm laughing while typing this, just thinking about it. 2 of them were already at my car, pulling the front seats forward and climbing in the back of my little 2-door crap queen. I was almost out of the cemetery, about to walk through the gate when I hear running footsteps behind me. I did not even think about looking back. I let out a screech and started sprinting. I was about 10 feet away from my car, and I probably reached it in like 4 strides. I was booking it so hard. I'm not fast either. My manual that wishes she were an automatic wouldn't start. I kept stomping on the clutch and brake, and finally, my key turned. All while my friends are screaming at me, "Go! Go!" It's a gravel pathway only big enough for 1 car at a time that we have to drive up and down to get in and out of the graveyard. My poor baby was fishtailing I was moving so fast. It's so dark too. There's only 1 streetlight near the graveyard and it's right at the entrance at the turnoff from the main road. We were surrounded by nothing but trees in the dim moonlight. We got back to our friend's mom's house and were all practically yelling at her in the kitchen about what just happened. She called us idiots and said she didn't want any of that stuff in her house, so I took it back outside and put it in the trunk of my car. I didn't have the feeling that I was being watched anymore, but I just felt different. I don't know how to explain it. I went back inside and they were already looking up the name Oz in Ouija. So, when demons are asked their name, sometimes they'll spell it backwards or only give a few letters of it so as not to reveal their true identity. There was nothing on Oz, but so many different things on Zozo. He is a well-known demon that is infamous for communicating through Ouija. It hit me. He wasn't spelling Oz over and over, he was telling us his real name repeatedly to gain power, and then he was about to do the thing he's known for, which is take advantage of stupid kids communicating with the otherworldly through a board. We all just sat there. We felt like we came close to death or something. Needless to say, it was a few years that went by before I picked that board up again. Thankfully, I haven't come across Zozo since. Has anyone else experienced this before? I'd love to hear about it. Just thought I'd share mine, and now you know how he can introduce himself too. Beware, y'all. Hi all. This is a bit of a lengthy one, but as it happened today and is still fresh in my mind, I need to scribble it down. My friend / colleague and I are heavily into the paranormal. Always have been, and I think we always will be. We've been on ghost hunting tours. We watched the same sort of terrifying ghost encounters on YouTube, and we're just generally intrigued with the other realm. We even bring a K2 into work to just sit on the side and see if it flashes up, which it does sometimes. This sort of thing doesn't worry or scare us. The more we've delved into it, my friend, who I'll name Claire, has felt some psychic connections. For an example, we've called out to the spirit world and asked for taps / to light up the K2 in response, and Claire will suddenly have a pain somewhere in her body, to which she'll ask if they had that pain / problem in real life, and the spirit will respond yes by tapping or flashing the K2. She'll also have random names pop in her head, or a song, etc., which have all been confirmed by the spirit as being connected. She often feels different energy levels, and whether they're good or bad, this is all relevant later. So, this brings me to the Ouija. We've always said we'd never do a Ouija board due to the horror stories, but we'd done our first ever Ouija board experience not too long ago on a ghost hunting tour, with mediums giving us protection, and it all felt very safe. Nothing scary happened, and it was hard to tell if it was actually moving or if it was someone from the group moving it. Alas, it didn't satisfy. But it did intrigue us, and we wanted to try it again, which brings me to today. We made a board and used it at work together, where there was just the two of us in. But firstly, I just want to say that we've done all the possible learning available on the internet about the board, from what you should / shouldn't do, prayers of protection, and most importantly, what you do if you come into contact with Zozo. So we lit some candles on a table, drew a board on some paper, and used a small glass as the planchette. We voiced our protection prayers before starting, and then began. I opened the board by saying we were only there to talk to anyone of love and light, and they could use the energy from the candles and our fingers to help move the glass if needed. We were very respectful throughout, and we were quite patient, chatting amongst ourselves, which paid off. The glass began to move, slowly. Claire asked if someone had suffered with their lungs, as she got a feeling that they did, and the glass moved to yes. We made some small talk, and then all of a sudden it stopped moving for ages. We'd agreed that the spirit had left, so we rewarmed the board by circling the glass 3 times. We had a lot of passers-by, nothing really much to report. One asked if Claire had a dog, as she had some dog hair on her jumper. She does own a dog. And another told us to be careful. We thanked each spirit for communicating with us when they decided to leave. This marks the end of the pleasant connections. Claire said she began to feel like the dark was closing in on us and the lights were dimming. I couldn't see this, and she all of a sudden felt very angry and as if we were being watched. We carefully asked who it was and if they wished to communicate, and the glass moved to no. We thanked the spirit and said we were moving the glass to goodbye to close the board. And I kid you not, we could not move that glass at all. It stopped in its tracks and we could feel a heavy force keeping it in place. We both tried moving this glass to no avail. I spoke out and said we will be moving this glass to goodbye and they cannot stop us, and the heavy feeling lifted and we were able to say goodbye. We closed the board down. I said a closing prayer and we sat for a while discussing what had happened. After a while, Claire said she felt better, and we decided to give it another go. This was a huge mistake. We reopened the board with our prayers and in the same manner as before. Then we had what appeared to be my grandma come through the board. She spelt her name and age and then started spelling out something else. Whilst this was happening, Claire said, "I get the feeling she wants me to tell you you're amazing," and it moved to yes. Claire then said, "And are you telling me to tell her you're happy and well?" And again the glass moved to yes. I of course burst into tears. I was extremely close with my grandma, and I haven't had any contact with my mum, who's still alive, and my grandma's daughter, for around 12 years. That's a whole other long-ass story, but I've spoke about it recently with Claire, which is why it's relevant. The board began to spell out my mum's name, which is Sonia. However, the board incorrectly spelt the name and spelt it Sonia. My tears immediately stopped flowing, and I couldn't help but say, "This isn't my grandma. We're being fooled. Isn't that right?" And the glass moved to yes. I then asked if they knew they'd made the spelling mistake, and it moved to no. Claire then reveals she heard a laugh in her head and a "tricked you." The mood and atmosphere then very much changed. We asked who it was, and it began to spell Zozo. We didn't let it finish spelling it out, and we quickly said our goodbyes and forced it to no. Closed it down as before, and said our closing prayer. We had a chat about it and came to the conclusion it was using Claire's energy and abilities, and so we decided that if we reopen it one last time, Claire would close off, not saying anything and not let it feed off her. And so we did reopen the board again, with the opening prayer of course. We quickly realized we were back in connection with Zozo. It kept spelling Claire's name, to which I firmly told him he cannot communicate with Claire and he cannot use her energy, that we will not allow it. He spelt out "please," to which I firmly said no. I demanded he left the board and let a spirit of light and love enter to talk with us, but he wouldn't budge. He spelt out "her energy" and "I want," but I just kept being calm but firm. He then proceeded to spell out one of Claire's deceased relatives' names to spark a reaction, but fortunately she didn't give him one. He kept trying to move the glass off of the table, which we didn't allow. He spelt out "F you" to me, but was appearing weaker in movement. We finally decided to end the session for the last time today. Once we had ended it, Claire heard a "well done" in her head, which helped us believe we did everything correctly, albeit it was a scary experience. However, it doesn't end there. Upon returning home this evening, my boyfriend had popped out and I was alone. I had Fresh Prince of Bel-Air on the TV playing through Netflix whilst I did some chores. But the channel screen changed to another, which was a cartoon of a father and daughter. The daughter said, "We're not there yet, Dad," and the father responded, "Oh, but I won't live forever." The clip kept looping and looping, just playing those two sentences one after the other. I immediately turned it off. A huge fear of mine is losing my dad. He's fit as a fiddle, but is in his 70s, and it's just something I've always worried about. I see that as a warning or a sign. I told Claire about it, and she thinks it's just a coincidence, but I'm not so sure. Now I'm worried. Anyway, thanks for sticking this out, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it all. In my 19 years of living, I've experienced many odd and spiritual occurrences, unfortunately, and have come to believe that I am extremely sensitive to all things paranormal. Knowing this, I probably never should have purchased a Ouija board, but some of my friends had talked me into it. I'm not blaming them for what has happened to me, it's completely my own fault. With that being said, I hope that anybody who reads this will avoid Ouija boards, because no matter what people say, it's not just a game. The results of talking to an evil spirit can stick with you for a very long time, and trust me, it's not fun. A little over a year ago, I had purchased a Ouija board online because my friends thought it could be fun. We live in a pretty small town, so there isn't much to do besides driving around and listening to music. When it arrived, I avoided using it because I had heard too many horror stories about them from family members. But one night, when I had a couple friends over, we decided to use it, and I blamed my paranoia on my extremely religious parents and decided that nothing would even happen. But I was very wrong. We used the planchette and moved it in circles to start the session. We had read rules online and tips to bring a spirit through. We went around the circle saying our names to introduce ourselves to whatever spirit came through, and then asked if there were any spirits that would like to talk to us. For a while there was no response, but we were patient and took turns asking the previous question. When it was my turn to ask, the planchette very slowly moved to yes, and my heart sank. I was shaking at this point because the room went completely silent. I could tell none of my friends had moved it because all of our fingers were practically hovering over the planchette, and it glided across the board with ease. For anybody who has never used a Ouija board, you can tell when a person moves the planchette because you can feel it scrape against the board, but when it's a spirit, it moves effortlessly. We asked it stupid questions about what our favorite colors were or how old we were to test its legitimacy. It answered all of them correctly. We played it for about 2 hours. This shocked us all because it had only seemed like 30 minutes. Throughout the whole session, the planchette would move faster and easier with each question we asked. Before we had started, we read an article online saying not to ask the spirit questions about itself. For example, don't ask what its name is or how old it is. One of my friends, we'll call her Sam, decided to ask what the spirit's name was without consulting the rest of us. She's very forgetful. I immediately yelled at the board, "Don't answer that!" and the planchette stopped moving. I relaxed and reminded Sam that we're not supposed to ask it those kind of questions. But after she asked that, the board answered every question with Mama or Momo. If you've read into anything about Ouija boards, you know that there is a specific demon named Zozo that comes through some boards and is a very tricky spirit. After this session, I was too scared to look up what Mama and Momo meant, but when I finally did, I found out that these were other names that Zozo used. Fast forward about 5 months. I still owned the board, and had used it more than I should have with a lot of different friends and a lot of scary occurrences during sessions. But I had never once thought the occurrences would happen outside of a session, so I felt safe when the board was in its box and behind my bookshelf. In November of 2017, I started having the dreams. Every few nights I would have a dream where I would pass by a mirror and see what I would personally label as a demon or an evil spirit. It was tall and completely black, like a 3-dimensional shadow with extremely broad shoulders and a slender body. Think Ryuk from Death Note with less spikes and hair. I would only see it in mirrors, and I would always avoid looking for more than a split second. These dreams are the most realistic I've ever had. Another month goes by of having these dreams, and then I see the demon in real life. My room is set up normal. When you walk in, there's a TV stand with a TV on it to the right, and in the middle of the left wall is my bed. This night, I had played the Ouija board with my boyfriend at the time and Sam from the beginning of the story. This session was weird because every answer was just a jumble of letters and sometimes a no, but never a yes and never a goodbye. When we decided to say goodbye, there was resistance on the planchette pulling in the opposite direction. I felt very uneasy, and having grown up in a religious family, I knew that nothing was more powerful than my faith, and I could stop whatever this was by relying on God to help me. I know not everybody is religious, and may have different beliefs, but this, for some reason, had worked for me. As we were struggling to move the planchette to goodbye, I started to recite the only Bible verse I had memorized in the youth group I went to in the 4th grade, John 3:16. The planchette felt like it was light as a feather. We got it to goodbye and put it all back in the box. Now, back to the dreams. I had another dream that night after the session, with the demon in the mirror. They were lucid dreams, so I could very easily wake myself up and have normal thoughts. I decided that I was done with whatever this was, and I remembered that the Bible verse had worked for getting the planchette to goodbye. So, I turned my body toward the mirror in my dream, still looking at the floor because I was scared to look the demon in the eyes, and I said, "You are not welcome here. In Jesus' name, leave me alone," and I woke up. I never saw if the demon in the mirror went away, but as I opened my eyes, the same demon was standing in the corner of my room by my door. I was paralyzed with fear, and I couldn't move or scream or say Sam's name to wake her up. After what felt like an eternity of staring at that menacing face with glowing eyes and an extremely taunting smile, I decided to pray. The demon didn't go away, but praying gave me the feeling of somebody hearing me, so it gave me the courage to turn towards my friend and kick her legs to wake her up. When she woke up, I was crying hysterically, pointing at the corner and scared to look back over there. She kept asking what I was talking about, so I looked over in the corner and it was gone. I jumped out of bed and turned the light on to make myself more comfortable. Once I had calmed down, I told Sam about my dream and how the demon moved from my dream and into my room. She told me she also had a terrifying dream with a shadow person in a mirror, and we decided to never mess with a Ouija board again. I'm sorry this was all over the place, but I thought I should share my experience and hope that I can save somebody from making the same stupid mistake that I made. I know Ouija boards are interesting and sound like fun, but it's honestly just not worth it. Hey guys, glad to see you made it to the end of the video. I must admit, I've always been curious about using a Ouija board, but I'm wary of inviting someone, or something, into my life who may just refuse to leave. If you have a scary story from your own life that you feel needs to be told, submit it to the email in the description, and I'll do my best to narrate it. Alright guys, that just about wraps up the video. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. So long, Fear Seekers. I'll see you in the next video.